بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا. اللهم زدنا علما إنك أنت عليم حكيم. اللهم اجعل هذه المحاضرة حجة لنا لا حجة علينا يا رب العالمين. أما بعد. This is our fourth class in Kitab Nikah, the Imam Al-Hajjawi rahimahullah ta'ala, in his book called Zaad Al-Mustaqni. Zaad Al-Mustaqni. Last week we spoke about muharramat fi nikah, or the things that are impermissible fi nikah, the things that are impermissible in marriage. And we said they break down into how many categories?
Solid 4.
Salam. Is that?
Sorry,
2 categories. We said that the muharramat fi nikah break down into 2 categories. Right? 2 categories. What are they? Mm-hmm.
Which means you can never ever marry them.
Right?
And you have al-amd, which means you can't marry them for a period of time, but you could later.
Right. So the 2 categories are al-amad or al-abadan, or abadan means forever. You can never marry that group. And the other group is al-amad, which means for a time period you cannot marry those groups. For the women that are ala abad, meaning you can never marry them, how many categories were those? 4? Only one person? Right. The sisters can answer too. Right. 4. Give me one of the categories.
One of the categories.
Lineage. Type. That's 1. What's the other one? Breastfeeding. Radha'a, that's 2. What's the other one? Huh? Marriage, that's 3. And there's one more. The people that are cursed. Like, all of those people equal to how many women? 19. Ahsant. So, with lineage, how many women were in the category of lineage? 7. Breastfeeding. 7. Musahara, or with a marital contract. How many? 4. And the last one was cursing, was how many? 1. So that equals 19. Today, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to discuss the other side, the one that we didn't talk about yesterday or last week. This particular group is called ala-amad. Ala-amad, it means that these people are impermissible to marry for a time period, for a particular time period. But this group of women, likewise, yanqasim ila qismayn, or this group of women, they also fall into 2 different categories. They also fall into how many categories? 2. So the first group is li jam'in, meaning you cannot marry these women due to jam'in. Jam'in means a combination, meaning you cannot marry this particular woman due to an attachment to another woman, and therefore it becomes impermissible. And then the other group is these women cannot be married due to an outside issue, meaning there's an issue there that prevents her from getting married for a time being. So then there are 2 groups. The first group is due to a combination, meaning a sister with another Muslim woman, it poses a problem. Therefore, they cannot get married. Does that make sense?
Can you give me an example?
I'll explain everything. I'll give you an example, just in general. And then the next one is a woman, there's an issue with that particular woman at that particular time that would prevent her from getting married. Like, the first group, ala jam'in, means there's a combination, is a woman, and there are 5. We're going to summarize it first, and then we're going to read it in the book, inshallah. The first group, li jam'in, is that if a man were to marry a woman, let's say, for example, he's married to a sister. It says, ukht mu'taddatihi. Ukht mu'taddatihi. So let's say, for example, he marries a sister. And then he divorces her and puts her in iddah. She's in iddah. While she's in iddah, he wants to marry her sister. This becomes muharram, but for how long? Until the sister's iddah is finished. Until the iddah is finished. This is called muharram ala amad, meaning for a select time period. طيب. The next one, let's say, for example, he did not divorce his wife. Rather, he's still married to her. And he wants to marry her sister. Is this permissible or impermissible? If a brother wanted to marry, he can have more than one wife. So he's married to his wife, and then he wants to marry his wife's sister. Is that permissible?
No.
You don't know?
No.
Right. The sisters say no. Any brothers disagree with that? Huh? Right. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَإِن تَجْمَعُوا بَيْنَ الْأُخْتَيْنِ. Allah says that we cannot combine between 2 sisters in marriage. And Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he said in authentic hadith, لا تجمعوا بين المرأة وعمتها ولا بين المرأة وخالتها. متفق عليه. And we're going to mention the other group of women right after that. And Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he also prohibited a man from marrying a sister and her father's sister, or marrying a sister and her mother's sister. This is 4 and 5. Actually, this is 3 and 4. Right. One was marrying a sister's sister that is in iddah. Let's say, for example, a brother's wife is in iddah, and then he wants to marry her sister. This is muharram ala amad, meaning for a certain time period. The next group is his wife. He wants to marry his wife's sister, not the one that's in iddah, but his wife's sister. Do you see the distinction between the two? All right, so one is in iddah and one is not in iddah. That's 1 and 2. Number 3, we'll just left this one off. Number 3, wa bintahuma. He cannot marry his wife's, or his wife that is in iddah. He cannot marry her sister's daughter while she's in iddah. And likewise, he cannot marry his wife's sister's daughter, period. This is also ala amad. Is that clear? Did somebody say no? Right. Right. So, do you guys get the first 2? Your sisters, did y'all get the first 2? All right, so the problem is the third one. So, either one of their daughters.
The wife's daughter or the wife that's in iddah?
Absolutely. Not the wife, the sister. The wife's sister. Is that clear? Pay attention. It's a combination. Right now we're talking about a combination marriage here, right? The brother, the first one is, the brother puts his wife in iddah. His wife is in what? Iddah. His wife has a sister. That sister is what? Can he marry that sister? Not while she's in iddah, right?
So he can't marry the niece.
He can't marry the niece either, meaning the sister's daughter. Is that clear? All right. In both cases, whether she's in iddah or it's just his wife, either way, he cannot marry his wife's sister's daughter or the wife that is in iddah, her sister's daughter, while they're still married to until the iddah is actually complete. Is that clear? Fine. Salam. The next one. Likewise, he also cannot marry their aunt, meaning his wife's aunt from the father's side and his wife's aunt from the mother's side. This is also impermissible, and these are the 5 women, meaning he cannot combine. This is what the issue is. So he cannot be married to the sister and married to her aunt at the same time on the father's side. He cannot be married to the sister and her aunt at the same time on the mother's side. This is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he said that لا تجمع بين المرأة وعمتها وخالتها. And Nabi ﷺ, he said you cannot combine between a woman and her paternal aunt and her maternal aunt. And this hadith is muttafiqun alayh. This hadith you can find in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim.
This is whether they are in iddah or not.
Yes. Whether they're in iddah or not.
This is for all of them.
Yes. The ones that we just mentioned right now, yes. For those 5, yes. Whether they're in iddah or not. Right. Right. قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى, and he says in the text, he says وَتَحْرَمُ إِلَى أَمَدٍ أُخْتُ مُعْتَدَّتِهِ. He says it is haram ala amad, meaning for a select time period, the sister of the one that is in iddah, or ukhta zawjatihi, or his wife's sister while he's married to her, wa bintahuma, or their daughters, wa ammatahuma, or their aunts, paternal aunts, wa khalatahuma, or their maternal aunts. And then he says فَإِن طُلِّقَتْ وَفَرَغَتْ عِدَّةُ أُبِحْنَا. If the brother divorces them, wa faragat iddataha, if he divorces her and those women finish their iddah, then those other women become permissible for him to marry. Those other women become permissible for him to marry. Is that clear? That's not clear.
No. Okay. Wait a minute. The first 4 was for iddah or not?
All of them are the same.
All right, I need you to explain.
Which one?
The 5th one, because the last one you just said, because you said whether they're in iddah or not, and al-amr, which means for a selected period of time.
La. Right. It's 5 women. 5 women, right? The first one is the wife's. Okay. So you have a sister that you divorced. She's in what?
Iddah.
She's in iddah, right? You can't marry her sister. Or you can't marry her daughter. Why? Because she's in iddah. Once her iddah is over, then he can what? He can marry the sister or he can marry her daughter. Are you with me? That's the first one. That's the one that's in iddah. The one that he's married to, likewise, he cannot marry her sister or her sister's daughter. Until what? Until he divorces her and she finishes her iddah. Then those women also become halal for him. Does that make sense?
My confusion was whether you said iddah or not. I'm sorry.
First, you're saying if the wife and the you can marry us,
No, not us sister, his wife's sister.
his wife's sister.
Yes.
So which one you talking about when you mention the ayat and marriage?
Like the ayat is talking about combining between 2 sisters, meaning you marry a sister and you marry her sister.
Both of them at the same time.
Yes, we're talking, this is what we said. So ala amad means the prohibition for select time periods when you combine between women. All right? You can marry up to how many women? 4. But there's a combination of 2 types of women or 5 different groups of women that you can't marry together at the same time. From those women are your wife that's in iddah, you cannot marry her sister, or your wife, you cannot marry her sister. You also cannot marry your wife's sister's daughter while she's in iddah. Likewise, you cannot marry the sister your wife, you cannot marry her sister's daughter or her sister while you're married to her. Until what? Until you divorce her and she finishes her iddah. Does that make sense? You sure?
Yes, and these are all women who are in relation to one another.
Yes, this isn't called a combination. So it's called al-amad, which means for a select time period. For a select time period, these women are impermissible to marry. So now the fuqaha, or the ulama, they give examples. They say, وَإِن تَزَوَّجَهُمَا فِي عَقْدٍ أَوْ عَقْدَيْن مَعًا بَطَلًا. Let's say, for example, a brother, he says, I'm going to marry this sister, and I'm going to marry her sister at the same time. Let's say it happens, right? It says, إِن تَزَوَّجَهُمَا فِي عَقْدٍ أَوْ عَقْدَيْن. Let's say he marries both of them, 2 sisters, with 1 contract. Or 1 contract, meaning he marries both of them at the same time, okay? Or he marries one of them, and then he marries the next one, right? It means batalata, meaning batala. Those contracts or those marriages would be considered what? Invalid. If they're done at the same time. It says, فَإِن تَأَخَّرَ أَحَدَهُمَا. Let's say, for example, he marries one sister first, and then he marries the next sister the next day. Then the last one or the second marriage is what? Invalid. The first one is what? It's valid. Right.
Is that under 5? That was under 5.
That was a 5. Fine. Does that make sense, guys?
Yes.
Fine. The next one. The next group is muharram li'arid and yazul, meaning these women are muharram to marry because there's a arid, which means there is something preventing a brother from marrying these sisters. There's an issue there. So the issues, the first one is al-mu'tadda min ghayrihi. Let's say, for example, a sister, she just got a divorce. A sister, she just got a divorce from someone else. So she's in iddah. Another brother wants to come and marry her. He cannot marry her until what? Until the iddah is over. Fine. The second one, that's number 1.
What's the title of this?
The title of this one is called Li'arid and Yazul, meaning there's a prohibitor there, something that prevents or prohibits the sister from getting married for a time period. So the first one is al-mu'tadda min ghayrihi. If a sister is in iddah, if she's in iddah, easy. The second one, al-mustabra'atu min ghayrihi. Al-mustabra'a. The scholars of Islam, they explain al-istibra. It means in general, women who have haydatun wahida, meaning a woman that will only have 1 menstrual cycle before she's out of her iddah. These women, there's a group of them. One of them is called a wad al-shubha. A wad al-shubha is, for example, a man who marries a woman, or he thinks he's married to her, but he's really not, and they have intercourse. And in reality, it becomes clear to them that they're not married. This is considered a waqt shubha, meaning a doubtful intercourse. In this case, they are to be separated, and her iddah period is haydatan wahida, meaning one menstrual cycle. This is number 2. It's called a mustabra'ah. All right. A mustabra'ah, there's a different, so some of the fuqaha, some of the scholars, they say that al-mustabra'ah is a woman who has haydatan wahida, meaning her iddah period, it lasts for one menstrual cycle, and then she will be out of iddah. The purpose of this iddah here, and we'll cover this again when we get to the chapter strictly dealing with iddahs. But here, this woman is a woman that has one menstrual period. There's a title for these women. Some of them say that it's called al-mustabra'ah. And from those women, an example of one is a woman who falls into the category of a waqt shubha. Meaning, an example would be that she's married to a man where she believes that she's married to a man and the man believes that he's married to her, but in reality, they may not be married for whatever reason. I'm sorry, you said, how can that happen?
What's an example of they may be married?
Man, listen, so some of the ulama gave examples when we were in school that wouldn't fly if I told you. So I have to, let's say for example, it wouldn't fly in our society, like no one would buy it. Let's say for example, we went over the issue of shurut al-nikah, right? We went over the issue of the conditions for the marriage, did we not? So there were 4 conditions of the marriage, right? What are some of the conditions? What was the first one?
Witnesses.
That was the last one. Well, let's just say witnesses. Let's say witnesses. Let's say, for example, they got married and according to the Hanabila, they say that they didn't have any witnesses, therefore there's no nikah without let's say a wali. They say they got married without a wali. According to Imam Malik, according to Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal, the la nikah, the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he said la nikah illa bil wali. There's no nikah, there's no marriage unless you have a wali. But they believe they're married. So in this case, they come in front of a judge. The judge says, "La, you're not married. You're not married because you didn't have a wali. Therefore, they're living together. This is called a waqt shubha." If they went in front of a judge, the judge would separate between them, and her period of iddah would be one menstrual cycle. This is called istibra al-rahim, meaning the purpose of this one menstrual cycle is to ensure that she is not pregnant. To ensure that she is not what? Pregnant. Fine. You got a question?
Yes. What if the man knows, he goes into the marriage knowing that he's doing something wrong, but the sister don't know, but later on she
Doing
finds
something
out.
wrong like what?
Like he know he's supposed to have a wali or witnesses, and he does it in a way that he rushes the marriage. He doesn't. He tells her, "You don't need a wakil," and she doesn't really know.
It's still a what shubha. The hukum just stays the same. So in this case, she wouldn't be considered a zani. We wouldn't say this woman is a fornicator. And if she got pregnant, her child wouldn't be considered walad az-zina. We wouldn't say that child is a child from zina because there was a shubha.
But what about the man? Because he
It's
doesn't know.
sinful.
But it still wouldn't be a batil. It wouldn't be an invalid marriage.
It would be involved. That's why it's called what shubha.
Gotcha.
It's called a doubtful marriage because they got married, they thought they were married, but they really weren't. That makes sense?
Definitely.
Right. Does that make sense? Right. So then we have 2 so far. Al-mu'tadda min ghayrihi, a woman that is in iddah from someone else. She cannot marry another man outside of the one that put her in what? Iddah. The second one, al-mustabra'ah min ghayrihi, a woman that wants to have, that she is qualified for one menstrual cycle. One menstrual cycle. The second one, az-zaniya, a woman that fornicated. Hatta tatub wa tanqadi iddatuha. So if a woman fornicates, let's say you cannot marry a fornicating woman until what? Until she makes tawbah, number 1. And number 2, she finishes her iddah. Some of the ulama, there's a long maqal, there's a lot of positions on the iddah for a woman that commits zina. Some of them say it's only one menstrual cycle. Some say she falls into the category of mustabra'a. That's another topic. We'll discuss that later on in further detail, inshallah. Right. The next one, المطلقة ثلاثا حتى يطأها زوج غيره. Let's say now this is number 4. Number 4. Let's say, for example, a brother divorces his wife 3 times. Right? A brother divorces his wife 3 times. After he divorces her 3 times, he wants to marry her again. She is what? Muharram alayh. Meaning, she cannot marry him again until what? Until she marries someone else. He consummates the marriage, then they get a divorce, and then he can marry her again. And we're going to talk about that too in further detail. Right. The next one. The next one is a woman that is in ihram, a muhrima. Yes, no, not the next one, number 5. A woman that is in a state of ihram. Let's say, for example, we're going to make umrah or hajj. And a sister is in a state of ihram. What is the state of ihram? Does anyone know? Does anyone know what the state of ihram is? Has anyone ever made umrah or hajj? No? Well, I'll make it easy for you, I mean. Does anyone know what ihram is? When a person is in a state of ihram.
That's when you observing the rites for Hajj.
Ahsant. When a person is in a state of observance for the rites of Hajj or Umrah. When they say, Labbaik Allahumma Umrah, there's certain things that are permissible for you, and there are certain things that are impermissible for you while you're in that state. While you're in that state. If a woman is in a state of ihram, it is not permissible for her to get married, or the man to get married. Hatta tahilla, until they get out of the state of ihram. That's number 5. Right. Number 6. ولا ينكح كافرة أو كافر مسلمة. A non-Muslim man cannot marry a Muslim woman until when? Until he accepts Islam. Until he accepts Islam. This is also Muharram. Number 7. A Muslim لا ينكح الكافرة. A Muslim cannot marry a non-Muslim woman, according to the school of Imam Ahmed, unless she is kitabiyan. Meaning, she is kitabiyan, yani her family, her is either Christian or Jewish, and then they say wa abawaha kitabiyan, and her parents, mother and father, are also Christian or Jewish. The ulama, they make a distinction. They say if a man marries a non-Muslim woman, obviously she has to be Christian or Jewish. But not just that, her parents also must be Christian or Jewish. Christian or Jewish. Like, any questions about that? No questions? Say again?
Isn't there other conditions
Along with what?
Muslim men cannot marry a
There's a whole chapter about that. Right now we just mentioned this as it pertains to this issue right here. Well, there's a whole chapter, we're going to discuss that. All right. So now we're finished that section of who you can and who you cannot marry. Now we're going to move to a different chapter. This chapter is called The Conditions in a Marriage and the Defects of a marriage, or blemishes or shortcomings or drawbacks of the spouses. Does that make sense? So then the next chapter is 2 parts. The first part is conditions inside of a marriage, and the second part is the blemishes or the spouse's faults that may cause problems in the marriage. The first part, when we say conditions in the marriage, somebody that's been paying attention to the class will say, wait a minute, we already went over conditions of the marriage, right or wrong? Did we go over it, yes or no? No? One person? We already went over conditions of the marriage, right? So then what do you think we're talking about here? Ahsant. So the first part was conditions of the marriage. Meaning, without these conditions being met, there is no what? There's no marriage. Now, we're getting ready to discuss conditions inside of the marriage. Conditions inside of the marriage. And conditions inside of the marriage are also broken down into two categories. The conditions inside of a marriage is broken down into 2 categories. As-sahih, that which is correct, and then that which is not correct. So right now, we're going to talk about, actually it's 3 categories. It's 3. We have that which is correct, we have that which is incorrect but doesn't affect the marriage, and then we also have that which is incorrect and affects the marriage. Does that make sense? So the conditions inside of the marriage are 3. That which is correct, that which is incorrect but doesn't affect the marriage, and that which is incorrect and affects the marriage. Is that clear? Or no? Did I lose you? Right. Right. I need y'all to pay attention on this because these some issues that is important. I mean, they're all important, but like, so right now, understand that when we talk about conditions, when we talk about these conditions, these are conditions that are inside of the marriage. Let's say, for example, before they get married, sister says this, I want this, I want this, I want this. The brother says X, Y, Z to the end of it. This is what we're talking about, conditions in the marital contract. Right. The first one we're going to discuss is ash-shurut as-sahiha. We're going to talk about the things that are correct in a marital contract that can be put in the marital contract, except for the first one that we mentioned here. And we're going to mention this first one because Imam Abi Musa Hajjawi, he mentioned it in Zaad Al-Mustaqni, and we're going to cover it. The first one he says, and if anyone does not understand, please stop me. It says, إِذَا شَرَطَتْ الْمَرْأَةُ طَلَاقَ ضَرَّتِهَا. The first one that according to Imam Al-Hajjawi, and also one person from the Salaf, his name was Abu Khattab, he says that it is permissible for a woman to put in her contract that if her husband marries her, in order for him to marry her, he has to divorce his other wife. Pay attention. In order for him to marry her, he has to divorce his other wife. Now, many of the ulama, this is the position of Abu Khattab, also one of the people from the past. The reason why I'm mentioning this difference of opinion here is it's very important because some people may say, you follow a particular madhab, and the madhab does not follow dalil, etc., etc. However, here, as we go into this issue, you're going to notice that the ulama refuted this position. In fact, you're going to hear how some of them even explain it and how some of the companions even also took this position or opposed this position. It says, call him Muwafiq. Muwafiq here is talking about Muwafiq ad-Din ibn Qudama, rahimahullah ta'ala. He said, now pay attention to this. He also heard this statement from Abu al-Khattab. He heard this statement from him, and he said, Lam ara qawli ghayrihi. He said, I don't know anyone else besides him that held that position. He said, what? I don't know anyone else besides him that held that position. And then he says, وَيَحْتَمِلُ أَنَّهُ بَاطِلٌ. Perhaps his position is incorrect. But it's a nice way of refuting. And it's another shahid. It's another benefit of how the Salaf used to refute each other. He said, perhaps that's incorrect. I don't know anyone else that said that statement. Our religion is knowledge-based. He didn't call them names. He didn't say you're this, you're that. La. He just said, I don't know anyone else who held that position from the Salaf. Perhaps he made an error. Cool. Then he goes on to say who held the position that he's holding. He says, وَالصَّحِيحِ. He said, what is correct? As will be found from Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he said, قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أن تشترط المرأة طلاق أختها. And that a woman cannot, you cannot put in a condition for a man to divorce talaq ukhtiha. And then it says in another one, تشترط المرأة طلاق أختها. وفي لفظ أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا تسأل المرأة طلاق أختها لتكتفئ ما في صحفتها والتنكح فإن لها ما قدر لها. رواه البخاري. And this hadith that we find in Sahih al-Bukhari, and Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, لا تسأل المرأة طلاق أختها. Do not ask that a man divorces his other wife so that he can be sufficient with her. He said, rather get married, فَإِنَّ لَهَا مَا قُدِّرَ. Well, that sister will get whatever Allah has decreed for her. So in this position here, it shows that it is impermissible, as many of the ulama hold the position that it is impermissible for a woman to put a condition on her husband that he divorces his other wife before he marries her. Wadah? Is that clear?
I need the name of the one who hold that position.
Abu al-Khattab. Yes.
This is confusing. It's confusing for one reason.
Hmm?
It's confusing because of the statement of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, where he talks about the condition of the contract of the
We didn't
woman.
get there yet.
Got you.
And that, what you're talking about, has nothing to do with this issue right
I
now.
got you. But you see how the names and then the condition is it's similar but not really.
So we're going to explain that to him, inshallah.
Gotcha. Alhamdulillah.
Jayyid. Any other questions?
This is still the first one.
Still in the first one. Right.
Which is correct.
Huh?
Which is correct.
Yes, so this is considered from the ones that's correct, but put an asterisk next to it. Right? Right. The next one is Allah yatasarra. This here, I wasn't even going to mention this issue, this one here, because we don't have slaves in our society. But a brother mentioned to me a few weeks ago, he said, you know, some brothers have more than 4 wives, and they say this is, what they say?
Right-hand possession.
Right-hand possession. So we're going to put an end to that right now. A right-hand possession, brothers and sisters in Islam, is that woman is a slave. Is a slave. There are no slaves in our society. So there's no such thing as a right-hand possessed in our society. Is that clear?
Yes. Very clear.
Right-hand possessed is a slave. There are no slaves here. What did that happen?
Is it impermissible
Is what impermissible?
to have a slave?
Is it impermissible to have a slave? What kind of question? Does it say in the Quran that you can have a slave? It don't.
Yes.
So why are you asking that? The question is it legal to have a slave in your society that you live in? Next. Right. So the next one. The only reason why I mentioned that is because someone said to me, you know, a brother he knew had some right hand possession. I'm like, how do you get right hand possession?
He was joking.
No, he was dead serious. He was dead serious. Listen, this is some people. Listen, the thing is this: when brothers read the Quran in translation, they get from it what they want. People get from stuff that which they want to get from it. At any event, the next one, أن لا يتزوج عليها. At any event, that's a correct. So let's go back to that. If a wife says you can't get right hand possessed, for example, she can put that in her contract. This is considered a correct contract, a correct condition to put in the contract. The next one, if she says أن لا يتزوج عليها, if she says I'll marry you, but you cannot get another wife, if she puts that in the contract, this is also correct. If she puts that in the contract, this is also correct, according to a lot of the ulama. Right.
Now, I ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
This is what she's putting in the contract, but this is before the man decides to agree to this contract, correct?
Yeah, this is her conditions.
Okay.
These are conditions that these are conditions of a marriage that are considered correct, according to many of the ulama.
Conditions
Inside the marital contract. This is before they actually get married. She says, all right, listen, I want you, if I marry you, you can't get another wife.
conditions inside the marriage contract.
Yes, inside the marital contract. You should have came to class? No, you should have came.
It's a joke. You gonna repeat this? You probably back there like,
Yeah, so
What if you don't agree to it?
what if you don't agree to it?
What if she put a stake?
Is that a question? What if the brother doesn't agree to that?
Then they won't get married.
They won't get married. Depends on how strong she holds to her guns.
It's contract.
He about to slide out there like, yo. No, listen. A brother said to me last, he said, listen, you can't be telling everybody this stuff, right?
Yes.
But here's the reality. How many brothers they have daughters? I'm on my, come on.
No, it's a joke.
Like,
Can I ask something about that?
go ahead.
Would that be kind of restricting that brother from following the sunnah?
It's true. Some of the ulama hold that position, but we're going to talk about that. Just let me finish and then we'll get back to that. This is a condition. Not all of the ulama agree on this condition, but the school of Imam Ahmed definitely holds on to this position here. Also, وَلَا يُخْرِجُهَا مِنْ دَارِهَا, that if she puts in a contract that if she marries you, she wants to stay in her own house. And that's also something she could put in her contract. And likewise, if she says, I don't want to leave this country, and she also puts that in her contract, right? Like, so what number was that? That was 4. So for those 4, or for the last few that we mentioned, and لا يخرجها من دارها أو بلدها أو لا يتزوج عليها, that he doesn't allow her to, or she doesn't want to leave her house, she doesn't want to leave her country, and she says to him, you can't marry another wife, or you can't take a right hand possess. So the Salaf, many of the Salaf says, فَهُوَ الصَّحِيحِ, this is correct, لَازِمٌ أَنْ وُفِئُ بِهِ, that it is incumbent upon her husband, if he marries her, to hold to it, وَإِلَّا فَلَهَا الْفَسْخ, if he does not hold to what she agreed to, then she has a right to get out of the marriage. She has a right for an annulment. She has a right for what? An annulment. Right. So who from the Salaf held this position? يَرْوَ ذَلِكَ عَنْ عُمَرْ ibn Khattab. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anh, he held that position. Was Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas held that position. While Muawiyah held that position. While Amr ibn al-As held that position. Radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And likewise, so a person may say, this contract, because the position is, this contract is false. You can't make something halal that Allah made haram, etc. This is an argument. It says, Qawla Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, remind you, this is a contract. The Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, Inna ahaqqa ma wafaytum bihi min al-shuruti mastahlaltum bihi al-furuj. He said, those contracts that have more of a right to pay attention to are those contracts that make the private parts halal. This is the statement of the Prophet ﷺ. He says, وَفِي لَفْظٍ إِنَّ أَحَقَّ الشُّرُوطِ أَن تُوفُوا بِهَا مَا اسْتَحْلَلْتُمْ بِهِ الْفُرُوجِ مُتَّفِقٌ عَلَيْهِ. And Nabi ﷺ, he said, إِنَّ أَحَقَّ الشُّرُوطِ, the conditions that have more of a right to be fulfilled are the ones that make the private parts halal. This hadith was reported by Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. وَقَوْلَ النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وسلم الْمُسْلِمُونَ عَلَى شُرُوطِهِمْ. And likewise the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, the Muslims are upon the conditions that they set. وَلِأَنَّهُ قَوْلُ مَنْ سَمَّيْنَا مِنَ الصَّحَابَةِ وَلَا يُعْرَفُ لَهُمْ مُخَالِفٌ فِي عَصْرِهِمْ. And he said this is a statement that we heard from the Sahaba, what the Sahaba mentioned. And he said we don't find anyone لَمْ يُعْرَفْ وَلَا يُعْرَفُ لَهُمْ مُخَالِفٌ فِي عَصْرِهِمْ. We don't find anyone differing with the Sahaba in their time period when this happened. He says, فَكَانَ إِجْمَاعًا, as if this was a scholarly consensus. As if it was a scholarly consensus. وَرَوَى أَثْرًا بِإِسْنَادٍ أَنَّ رَجُلًا. And so now they're going to give an example of the Sahaba implementing this position here. أَنَّ رَجُلًا تَزَوَّجَ إِمْرَأَةً, that a man married a woman. فَاشْتَرَضَ لَهَا دَارَهَا. And so they made it a condition that she's going to stay in her own house. She didn't want to move from her house. ثُمَّ أَرَادَ نَقْلَهَا. And then the man said, no, I want to move you. I don't want you to stay here. I want to move somewhere else. فَخَاصَمُوهُ إِلَى عُمَرٍ. And so the husband and the wife, they took their dispute back to Umar ibn Khattab. فَقَالَ لَهَا شَرْطُهَا. Umar ibn Khattab, he said to him, her condition is what it was. فَقَالَ الرَّجُلُ. So the man said, إِذَنْ يُطَلِّقْنَنَا. He said, then we're going to have to get a divorce. قال Umar ibn Khattab, and this is a principle that they mention, مَقَاطِعُ الْحُقُوقِ عِنْدَ الشُّرُوطِ, that a person gives up their rights when they write in conditions. When they write those conditions, they give up their rights. When a man agreed to that condition, he gave up his right. And they say, لِأَنَّهُ شَرْطٌ لَهَا, because this is a position, this is a condition that is beneficial to her. Something that she put in the contract for herself. Is that clear? Alright, what's your question?
So therefore, since the contract benefits the woman, he agreed to these things once they got married.
Yes.
So now he wants a divorce. Can he divorce her? Or can he not?
A man can divorce a woman anytime he wants.
All right.
A man can divorce a woman anytime he wants.
All right. See, I thought it was I was under the assumption that if he already agreed to a contract, he has to uphold it.
He has to uphold it, yes. But he can agree, he can say, I'm going to get married again, and if you don't like it, then we're just going to get a divorce. Or she can be patient. She can actually come off of that position. It's possible. Is that clear?
Once he agreed.
Huh?
So once he agreed.
But once he agrees to it, good point. Once he agrees to it, once he says, yes, I agree to this, and then he goes and does, he's sinful now.
Yeah, so he basically reneged.
Yeah, he redid. So this is also considered sinful according to many of the ulama.
Simple while he married, or simple if he divorced?
Sinful if he went against the condition.
If he divorces her for that.
Simple if he went against the condition. Not if he divorced. If he went against that condition.
How can he go against the condition?
What do you mean? You agreed to not take another wife while you're married to her.
Right, so how he go against it by, he can, The contract ain't valid, is it? Don't that invalidate the contract?
Invalidate what contract? The marriage contract? Does it invalidate the marriage contract?
Because
It's what's inside the contract, not the marriage contract.
It's not one of the conditions of the marriage contract itself. It's one of
Exactly. It's one of her conditions that she
personal
placed.
conditions.
Exactly.
So now, even if he do it, it's not invalidating the marriage. He's just being simple while he's in that whole act.
Exactly. So let's say, for example, a man agrees not to move his wife to another city, not to move her out of her home, not to marry another wife on top of her, etc. And he does it anyway. He's simple. He's simple.
Can the contract,
And it's a breach of contract. So therefore, she has a right to relieve herself or remove herself from the contract, obviously by a third party, by way of annulment. Now,
can a woman renew a contract, like make it different one?
while they're married,
Change her mind?
If you say
renegotiate.
like,
They change her mind about if she
You mean-
changed her mind.
Can she make?
She saying that
hello,
she
hello.
you listen?
What she's saying is once they get married, then she says, oh, I want to put that in my contract now.
Oh,
That's what she's saying.
Oh, subhanAllah.
Sure, renegotiate.
No. Or if she says he can't, but then later on says, okay.
That's different.
That's
Because that was her condition.
So she can.
So she can remove it if she wants to. That's her condition.
So you can't add.
You can't add.
This is beautiful, Sheikh, because it makes me think about it
Do you? Go
It
ahead.
makes me think about I don't know if I should say it right now. I'm gonna just stick to this and then ask you something else later.
I don't know, man. I might not be prepared.
To have a contract, like, cause what we talking about and what he was alluding to a little bit is having something in your contract that automatically makes a marriage invalid. You understand?
We're going to get to that.
Gotcha.
We're going to get to that. Right now, we're talking about the things in the contract that can be put inside of conditions that can be placed inside of a contract that are correct. That's what we're talking about now. Conditions that are what? That are correct. Any questions so far about this? Sisters, any questions? Right. So the next part, it says, قال رحمه الله أو شرط نقدا معينا. So let's say, for example, a sister put in her contract, I want a certain amount of money. When they say نقدا معينا, يعني قد يكون she wants a specific amount of mahar or a specific amount of dowry or whatever, right? أو زيادة في مهرها, or she wants an increase in her mahar. So a person might say, hold up, if she already agreed to the mahar, what is there an increase? Why does there have to be a condition in there, right? Does that make sense?
No.
All right. The mahar is what it is. So then she puts in the contract, I want an increase on my mahar, on my dowry. So let me explain
What
this
is
to you.
this? What you mean by increase? Like,
That's my point. What they're talking about here, let's say, for example, a brother gets married to a sister and she doesn't stipulate how much her dowry is. She doesn't say. So the fuqaha, they have a formula. And we want to get to that in the next chapter. But there's a formula. This formula is called al-mahrul mithl, meaning her mahar, her dowry would be similar to women like her. In this time, perhaps in her family, perhaps in her group of sisters, perhaps in society, etc. So then this is considered mahr mithl. So let's say, for example, in our society, the mahar that a woman usually gets, $500. Let's just say $500. Let's say $500.
okay,
Right?
that's a good example.
So she says, she knows that that's the norm. That's what everybody gets. She says that I want an increase. I want 1,000. She puts that in her contract. A sister may say, I want a Hajj trip. We heard that. So I want a Hajj trip, right? It's her right to put that in her dowry. Now, like I said, for a man, you can either agree or disagree. Right. It says, فَإِنْ خَالَفَهُ فَلَهَا الْفَسْخ. If the man goes against any one of the contracts or stipulations she put in her contract, then she has a right for an annulment or breach of contract.
Now, you said contracts.
I said contracts or contract?
First you just said contract. How many times does she get to change?
I meant to say contracts.
Okay. How many times does she get to request a mahar?
It's only one time.
Then how can she get an income?
Because listen to what I'm telling you. Perhaps they're getting married and she didn't say how much the mahar.
Okay.
Perhaps she never mentioned the mahar. Then it's automatically understood that mahrul mithal, meaning she would get what the women in her area gets.
So you can't get married without that?
La, you need a mahar. Right. So the next part. You want to ask some more questions?
I don't know if it's gonna come a time for it. Are you gonna do a section on dowry?
Yes. A whole chapter.
So I should wait for that.
Or you might want to get married before we go there.
Yeah.
Choice is yours.
She'll get married Saturday. No, it's ain't before Saturday.
She might tell you to hold off. Hold on, let's we get to that.
Not say that.
Right.
فإن خالفه فلا فاسق.
Okay.
فإن خالفه فلا فاسق.
Cool.
You went there?
Huh?
You already did it?
Yeah.
That's assuming he agreed to that.
Yeah. So listen, quick rehash. If the brother agrees to all the conditions that she met, or that she laid out for him, I want this. You can't do this. And he agrees. If he goes against that, she has a right for an annulment, and he's sinful. An annulment, and he's sinful. Is that clear? لا لا تزيد.
Annulment. Like, there's an annulment and a khula.
Are you the same? Fine. Good question. Is an annulment and a khul'a the same?
No.
No.
We found that out from the previous.
So, a sister may say, if her husband, she puts in a contract, don't marry another woman while you're married to me. Right? Her husband gets another wife. She says to him, I want a khul'a. Right? Just listen, this is what usually happens. A sister will request a khul'a. If he grants her a khul'a, that means she has to return the dowry to him. Islam says to her that you don't have to ask for a khul'a. You can ask for a fasq. You keep your dowry and you get an annulment of the marriage. Understand?
The annulment can supersede a pull-out for her in this case.
What do you mean supersede? She has to request a khul'a.
Why would she request one if she knows she can get an annulment and keep that?
Then that's the point. She would seek to get an annulment as opposed to a khul'a.
She may not know that point.
She might not know.
That's why.
That's why we having these classes.
Yeah, if she doesn't know, I mean,
She don't know that.
We ain't
that's the
getting-
purpose of these classes, to
we
let
ain't getting this
educate.
like this.
Like,
Brothers get old.
right. So the next part, we mentioned that the conditions in the marriage are how many types?
3.
Three. The first one are the conditions that are correct. And then we said conditions that are incorrect that nullify the contract. And then we have conditions that are incorrect, but they don't nullify the contract. Is that clear? All right. So the first part, we're going to mention them and then we're going to read from the text, inshallah. Tabtul al-aqd. These conditions here will nullify a contract. a nikah al-shigar. What is a nikah al-shigar? A nikah al-shigar is something that doesn't happen in our society. And what happens is, if a man, let's say the man has a daughter, and another man has a daughter, and he says to that man, I'll marry you to my daughter if you marry me to your daughter, and no mahar is exchanged and they swap. This is impermissible. And this will nullify the what? The marital contracts. Is that clear? The marital contract. Is that clear? Swapping of daughters with no dowry attached. This is not permissible. The second one,
So if the dowry is attached, they can swap?
well, it wouldn't be swapping.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it wouldn't be swapping because the swap itself is considered not necessarily the mahar, but the marriage, if you will. I'll marry you to my daughter if you marry. That's the condition they're putting on there. The condition. Right. Right. The next one is called Nikah al-Muhallal. Nikah al-Muhallal is what? This is also haram. Let's say, for example, a brother married or divorced his wife 3 times. His wife was divorced 3 times. He wants to marry her back. He says to a brother, listen, I'll give you $500, marry my wife, and then divorce her, and then so I can marry her back.
Don't he got knocked her off too? No?
He has to consummate the marriage, right? Or whatever. But the purpose, if they put that in a contract, meaning I'm going to marry you, or he wants to marry her just so she can become halal back for her first husband. This is haram to be put in a contract. Even if it's not put in a contract, but that was the intentions of the parties involved. This is also what? Haram. Nullifying what? Nullifying the contract.
What is the name for the person who actually agrees to that? I forgot. But it's a very bad name. Isn't it?
I don't
The
know.
person who agrees to marry that woman and then divorce her so he can marry, the man can marry.
Is there a name? I don't know. It's not coming to me. I don't know. Right. Another one is a nikah al-mu'allaq bil-shart. So let's say, for example, a man says, I will marry you. I'm going to marry you if I get paid $1,000 next month on my next paycheck, or something like that. Meaning, a person can't get married in the future with a condition on it. A person can't get married in the future with it, meaning right now they married, but we put the condition in the future, something that's out the way. Yes.
That's a delayed, what they call it, a delayed dowry.
Not a delayed dowry. A delayed dowry is something different. I just mentioned the money as an example. Let's say, for an example, what do they mention? All right. A person says, "Zawwajtuka idha jarat al-shahr." I will marry you the first of the month. A marriage, meaning he wants to marry right now, but they put in a contract, I marry you the first of the month. Meaning it's a condition waiting on something to happen in the future. Inside the contract. Not saying outside of that, saying, okay, we'll get married the first. Not saying that. But saying you put it in writing in the contract. Something that some of the people of the past used to do in their marriages. Right. The next one is called Nikah al-Mut'ah. Nikah al-Mut'ah. Al-Mut'ah is, for example, if a man wants to marry a woman and he marries her for a select time period, meaning I'm going to marry you for the winter. Just for the winter time. We'll just be married just for the winter. Or we'll get married for the summer. Or we get married for 2 weeks and then we'll call it quits. This is haram. This will nullify that contract. So all 4 of those things that were mentioned are things that will nullify the marriage. These are conditions that will nullify the marriage. Yes?
I need 3 again.
3 is a bit weird. Al-Mu'allaq bil-Shart means that the marriage is based on a future condition set. You put that in the contract. You should not do that. The example they use, "Zawajtuka ala ra'as ash-shahr," meaning I married you. I'm marrying you the first of the month. It's put in the contract.
Say it again, Shay, because I didn't catch it.
I'm marrying you.
No. The Arabic part.
Oh, it's called Nikah al-Mu'allaq bil-Shart, meaning the marriage is predicated on a condition happening, and you put that in the contract. The marriage is predicated on a condition happening. So basically, she could be in limbo. Well, she's married, but she's not married. What is it? Right? It's like limbo. This is not something that we find here. Common. I've never heard anyone do that. Maybe someone else did. The last one here are conditions that are put in a marriage contract that are fasida, meaning that they're wrong conditions to put, but it doesn't nullify the marriage. These conditions are not appropriate, but they do not nullify the marriage. Right. Right. Before we do that, we're just going to read this part here. It says, إِذَا شَرَطَ الْمَرْأَةَ طَلَاقَ ضَرَّتِهَا. We read that part. Right. It says, وَإِذَا زَوَّجَ وَلِيَّتُهُ عَلَى أَنْ يُزَوِّجَهُ الْآخَرُ وَلِيَّتُهُ فَفَعَلَ وَلَا مَهْرَ بَطَلَ نِكَاحًا. Meaning that this is talking about nikah ash-shighar. If a man marries one woman with the intention, if a man marries a woman with the intention of, I will marry her if you marry the other woman to me, or I will marry my daughter to you if you marry me your daughter. Right? And then the next one is nikah al-muhallal. It says, وَإِن تَزَوَّجَهَا بِشَرْطٍ أَنَّهُ مَتَى حَلَّلَهَا لِلْأَوَّلِ طَلَّقَهَا. Meaning, once he marries this woman, if the man divorced his wife 3 times, and she marries someone else, once they get married, he will divorce her so she can go back to her first husband. It's also muharram. أو نواه بلا شرط. Even if he intends it but doesn't do it, this is also impermissible. أو قال زوجتك إذا جاء رأس الشهر. Or if he says, I will marry you come the first of the month. Or إن رضيت أمها. I will marry you if your mother is happy. وإذا جاء غدا فطلقها. And the next one, or the last one, is I will marry you, but tomorrow I will divorce you. This is called Nikah al-Mut'ah. And the last part here, the last thing that we're going to cover today, inshallah, is the conditions that are put in a marriage that will not nullify the marriage, but these are false conditions. The first one, and this is going to cause some people to ask some questions. The first one, in sharata and la mahra laha. If a man marries a woman and he puts in a contract, I'm not going to give you any mahar, and she agrees to it, this condition is batil, meaning he can't do that. Even if she agrees to it, he still has to give her, or she still is owed her mahar. The second one, let's say for example, huh? Yeah, the mahar is dowry. Is everyone clear on that? Right. The next one, if he says, when they get married, he says, you know what? I'll marry you, but I'm going to put in a contract that I don't have to pay any nafaqah. What is nafaqah? Does anyone know what nafaqah is? There's a whole chapter that talks about that, but we're just going to talk about it briefly. What is nafaqah? Does anyone know? Your sisters, do you know what nafaqah is? Maintenance. That's a Philly word. Maintenance. What does that mean, maintenance? Describe maintenance.
Take care of her.
Bills? Nah.
No.
What bills?
Take care of it. No.
It's very specific. So you know that. What is it?
Maintenance. What they say in maintenance is when you get, when you give the woman a certain amount of money,
La. A nafaqa is food, clothing, and shelter. This is a nafaqa. And according to some of the ulama, which is also included in nafaqa, is the level in which that woman lives on. So for example, some of the judges would even stipulate that if a man marries a woman and she's used to having a maid, it will be incumbent for him to provide for her a maid. That's the level that she's used to. This is, and we're going to talk about that in detail when we get to that particular subject. When we get to that particular subject, inshallah. But, so let's say, for example, a man marries a woman and he says to her, La nafaqa, meaning I'm not going to spend any nafaqa on you. And she agrees to that. Right? This is batil in that, let's say, for example, they agree. He marries her, and he says, listen, I'm not gonna, it's batil to put that in a contract. Meaning he cannot put that in a contract that he's not going to give her nafaqah. Even if they agree, it can't be put in a contract. What does that mean? Let's say, for example, a brother's getting ready to marry a sister. He is responsible for food, clothing, and shelter. He says to the sister, I'm only marrying you, but I can't afford to take care of you like that. Right? She's like, all right, cool. I don't need the money. It's okay. Right? So he wants to put, well, I'm going to make sure that's in the contract. No, you can't put that in the contract. Right? So he marries her. So after he marries her, she says, you know what? I want you to take care of me. Like, I'm going to renege on that. That's her right. It's her right to request that nafaqah at any point in time. It's her right to request that nafaqah at any point in time. Any questions about that? Yes.
She agreed to it.
Mm-hmm.
Later she changes her mind.
Yes.
He tries to stand to that.
Stand to what?
To the fact that you agreed to it.
Right.
You know, I'm asking because this used to
No,
come
I'm sure this happens. This is something that happens.
in prison. He's come up in prison. And she says because of that, you know, I want a divorce. You understand? Because he's saying, you know, you agreed to it, you knew the situation coming in, now you asking for a divorce.
Right. A woman in this situation, according to the Salaf, she has two choices. Actually, she has three choices. So before we get into this subject, there's two things that's important to mention. When a man marries a woman and he pays that mahar, that first initial, and I hate to say it this way, but this is the way the fuqaha explain it. When a man pays that dowry gives him a right to be intimate with that woman. In order to continue that intimacy between the spouses, he has to pay nafaqah. Now we're going to explain what that means based on what the brother said. What?
What I'm trying to understand is, and I'm not saying, you know, we've been around, but why wouldn't the brother want to take care of a woman if he could afford it?
Sheikh, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that. Right now, I need everybody to understand that part. So, going to this right here. If a woman says she reneges on that, and she agrees initially to give up her rights, even if it means her nights. Let's say, for example, her husband has two wives, her and another sister. He's like, listen, I'm only going to be able to come see you 2 days out the week. 5 days I'm going to be with my other wife because I got my kids there and all that, and I'll see you 2 days out the week. She could agree to that, as long as it's not in the contract. But if at any point in time she says, you know what, that's not going to fly. I want the same equal amount of nights as the other wife. Now, he tries to hold strong and say, wait a minute, when I married you, I'm not going to divorce you. That's number one. I'm not giving you a khul'ah. Number two. And when we got married, that's what you agreed to. Does that sound familiar?
Very familiar.
Right. In this case, the ulama say this type of woman, she has 3 options. Option number 1, talab al-fasq. She can seek an annulment or breach of contract. Why? Because her rights, her haqq is not being fulfilled. Her haqq is not being fulfilled. That's number 1. Number 2, suppose she says, no, I want to stay married. Then in this case, she has 2 options. Option number 1, تجامع الزوج ونفقة في ذمته. She can continue being intimate with her husband, but the nafaqah is a dain or a debt that he has to pay eventually. It's building up. It's a debt that he has to build up. That's one option. Or she can refrain from being intimate with her husband until he what? Pays the nafaqah. Oh. Is that clear? Why? Bro, how is that, brother? Oh, I knew. Huh? What did I tell you? So the Salaf, they say what? Al-mahru, the dowry, is the initial getting married, the initial intimacy. Al-istimrar, to continue that privilege, the man must have continued to what? To take care of her. Otherwise, you lose that privilege.
Beautiful. Now, it's the opposite true. If she leaves obedience, do you refrain from?
We're going to get to that.
Got
Yes. But in general, if she doesn't, we're going to get to all of that. All that's going to be covered. If a woman doesn't listen to her, yeah, we're going to get, this is called imra'an nushuz. Imra'atun nushuz. One that doesn't listen to her husband. And we're going to get to that when we get to that particular part. Right. Any questions so far?
Yes.
Yes. Hold on.
Is food, clothing, and shelter specifically stated, or is that a translation of American?
No, food, clothing, and shelter, that's specifically stated. Shuf ya ukhti. In general, this is not for nobody, and pay attention. What we're doing here, this is called ta'aleem. We're learning, right? So don't take something general in class and apply it to your situation. Wow, and go home and they have brothers calling up here looking at us, right? The reality is this. If a man is married to a woman, his obligation is food, clothing, and shelter. That's his obligation, huh? Within his means. Yeah, within it. But it has to be food, clothing, and shelter. It depends, because let's say if the woman is, so today I had a conversation with one of the judges about this issue. Let's say for example, a woman says, you don't gotta take care of me, she marries you. Then she says, you know what? You gotta take care of me. Matter of fact, you gotta provide for me a house, you gotta provide food, clothes, all that, you gotta provide now. Now the husband says, I can't afford you. We already mentioned the options. So he says, you know what? I'm gonna just go ahead and divorce you. So he divorces her. While she's in iddah, he's still responsible to take care of her. So now what happens? If we're in a Muslim court, Muslim judicial system, he's gonna be brought in front of a judge, and the judge is gonna make him pay money. But if he's mu'sir means he's broke, he's poor, then they're going to look at how much money he makes, and they're going to take a portion of his salary and give it to her until the period is over. This is Islam. Well, there.
So in actuality, maybe she.
Any other questions about that?
So a man is allowed to have stipulations within a contract as well.
Can a man have, such as, give me an example.
Well, because you're saying that things that are non-nullifiers, a man puts in a contract, he will not give her any more. So he is able.
He can put some things like that. But I'll give you an example. Let's say, وَإِن شَرَطَهَا مُسْلِمَةً فَبَانَتْ كِتَابِهِ. Let's say, for example, because a man can also get an annulment of the contract. All right? Let's listen. And there are other benefits for that, but we'll talk about that at another time. So say, for example, he marries a woman, he puts in a contract, my wife must be Muslim. And he marries her and finds out that she's Christian. She's not Muslim. Or he put in a marriage contract, I want my wife to be a virgin. Find out that she's not a virgin. Or he puts in his contract, I want my wife to be beautiful. Maybe he never saw her. But after he married her, he saw that she's not beautiful. Or he puts in a contract, I want her to be from a family Dhul Nasabin, meaning she comes from an honorable lineage, and finds out that she doesn't come from an honorable lineage. These things in general do not nullify a marriage unless, or a contract, or the condition, unless it is specifically put in the contract. In this case, if she's other than all those things that he mentioned, he can also get an annulment from the court, that particular marriage. A person might say, well, why does a man need an annulment? Because if he divorces her, guess what? He's still what?
Responsible.
Financially responsible. Also, if he paid her money, then she has to what? Give back that dowry. Well, does that make sense? Does it make sense? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah, it makes plenty sense.
All right. With that, we're going to stop unless there's any other questions.
But they have,
Public.
Okay.
All right, real quick. A sister asked a question. Can you get married without a contract? When we talk about contracts here, it doesn't necessarily mean written on a piece of paper. A contract or an aqd is the marriage itself. So it's not a necessity that is written on a piece of paper. When people get married, whatever conditions they agree to during that marriage, then that's the contract, whether it's written or not. Now, should it be written? Yes, it should be, so that way you can go back and refer to it if need be. No. Oh.
I wasn't here for all the classes, but my question was, did you go over what women are haram to marry?
Yes. Went over that in 2 classes. The last class and first part of this one.
Okay, I'll deal with this one then. The mut'ah marriage, that's not confined to 3 days. That can be any length of time that's retroactive, right? Okay, you said that this type of marriage is not permissible. Okay. Is it permissible to marry a woman with the intent to divorce? However, not that the marriage will dissolve, but with the intent to divorce. You understand what I'm saying?
That's what the mut'ah is. Married with the intent to divorce. Because that time didn't come yet, so your intention was to divorce her when you married her.
I'm asking 2 things then. One is, if I say, I'm gonna marry this girl for a year, then after the year, I'm gonna divorce her. So I'm bound to that year. However, if I say I'm gonna marry this girl while I'm overseas, and when I leave, my intent is to divorce her, but I have the choice and the option to divorce her or not to divorce her. You understand what I'm saying?
Is this when you went into the marriage?
Definitely. I'm marrying and saying I'm gonna marry her while I'm overseas, and when I leave, I'm gonna divorce her.
Yeah, the word of man said it's not permissible. Right, sure. Man, did he?
The things that a man and a woman stipulate within a contract, should this be stipulated and agreed upon in front of the wali?
Yeah. I mean, the wali represents the sister. Remember we said, La nikah illa bi wali. There's no marriage unless there's a wali. Not a wakil, a wali. So how can his daughter get married and have all these contract stipulations and he not be aware of it? All right? Another benefit of the wali knowing this, because he can hold the brother accountable. Right? Without accountability, and this is the reality. Without accountability, people will do what they want.
Brother got a question.
Hello, With this question, I got a question. The sister said, what if the brother borrows the dowry from the wife and never paid her back? Can she refrain from being intimate? So the question to her would be, does the husband spend nafaqah? Is he spending on her food, clothing, and shelter? All those things have to be asked. Allahu Akbar. Now,
Brother asked, as pertaining to the written contract in this society, do you advise getting the document notarized?
whatever works for them. I mean, unfortunately, we don't have any streamlined system in place in the Muslim community, which is unfortunate. As a Muslim communities throughout this city, it definitely needs to be some organization with that. People may come to one masjid, there should be some type of connection between all the different masajid with regards to things like that. There should be some streamlining, but as of now, that's not the case. The lesson. Any other questions? Any questions from the sisters? طيب. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
She said, yeah.
She said, yeah.
She said, yeah, if you had a question.
Go ahead. What's the question?
She said, yeah, you can't say nothing.
Huh? Hello. That's something that this question is something you probably gotta talk to on a personal level, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair.